It's amazing, amazing. Last year, after an assassin tried to take my life in Butler, Pennsylvania, Thomas generously mailed me one of his Purple Hearts. Many of the other veterans showed me the same unbelievable gesture of kindness, including three-time Purple Heart recipient John Ford and Gerald Enter Jr., who also came along with us and did us a great, great favor. Gerald, John, and Thomas, I want to thank you very much. What a great honor to get those Purple Hearts. I guess in a certain way, it wasn't that easy for me either when you think of it, but you went through a lot more than I did, and I appreciate it all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Where are you? Stand up, please. Please. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, that's Donald Trump recognizing that he got Purple Hearts sent to him after the brutal assassination attempt that killed another man. You remember the assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania? A man died in the crowd. Trump had a graze on his ear that healed miraculously without even a scar. But hey, it was pretty hard for him to get those Purple Hearts. And I start with that clip because, one, it's just so freaking ridiculous how this guy acts. But two, it kind of shows how, military personnel and veterans are just symbols to these guys, right? We are tools to be used. I am, as you guys know, a 22-year Army veteran and a combat veteran, and we are just tools. So look, there's two institutions. All of our institutions are attacked, but you guys know I have great passion for my veterans and my military members. Two institutions are really under attack, and this week, so just how bad it is, and maybe amongst all the Epstein news and redistricting, everything all going on, you may have missed the news about just unbelievable attacks on the DOD, our service members, and the VA, our veterans. So I want to ring those in. So look, it's just me this week. As you know, I am Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy, the FB Wellman. All you guys are here right with me Friday night. I appreciate the Midas Mighty. We are going to talk about how Pete Hegseth and Doug Collins are dismantling and destroying the institutions they're supposed to be in charge of through various means, be it bigotry, be it hate, be it Christian nationalism, and I'm not necessarily sure, incompetence and a malevolent plan to privatize the work. All those things are happening. We're going to talk about it in the next little bit. I just want to say hi to you guys. It's just me this week. Let's have a conversation about what is happening to our service members, our veterans. Let's get on the show. All right, welcome. I am Fred Wellman. As you know, welcome to Otherwise I Do. I'm so good to see so many familiar faces here. I appreciate you guys always joining us exclusively here on the Midas Touch Network. We are so fortunate. I know it's summertime, it's a little quiet. I know it's a lot of you guys are traveling. I was traveling this week. I took a short vacation out to the Olympic Peninsula to do some hiking. It was a beautiful week. You notice I didn't get any sun because I was hiking at the Olympic Peninsula, as you guys you may well know. It's just cloudy and rainy, but it is just such a beautiful place. But I didn't exactly get my tan on the beach, needless to say. But look, let's get serious for a little while here and talk about what is happening at the Department of Defense and the Department of Veterans Affairs. And look, it is nuts, right? And so this week, Pete Hegseth. So I talk a lot about Pete Hegseth. I have very little of no respect for Pete Hegseth. The fact that he served, it's great. I appreciate that. But he has been promoted well above his pay grade, as we like to say in the military. He left the military as a major. His largest formation he ever led was a platoon, a few troops. I had 3 of those when I was lieutenant. He had 1. That's as big as he ever got. Now he's got the largest cabinet agency. And a lot of times, it really feels like he's running a squad. He doesn't realize he's in charge of the entire United States Department of Defense. And that includes important things: contracting, installations, international affairs, working with our allies. No, that's not what Pete does. Pete does things that would normally be left to the generals. Frankly, normally would be left to the enlisted men. For example, this conversation he had, of course, with Will Crane, his favorite place to go when he needs a safe place. he goes to Newsmax.
We're going to do the complex stuff really well, Will. We're at the 200-day mark. You know, in the last 100 days, we did Operation Midnight Hammer with precision. That's complex stuff that only the U.S. military can do. But we're also going to do the basic stuff well, Will. If you start soft, you end soft. If you aren't strong from the beginning, you won't finish the fight properly. It starts at basic training. It starts at our military academies. We are going back to basics. Drill sergeants will be drill sergeants with knife hands who maintain good order and discipline and train up great recruits who will make great formations, just like we need military officers with that same rigorous discipline and background. So we're going back to basics, and it's bearing fruit.
I'm not sure what a knife hand is. Is that what you're doing right now on television? Boom, giving me a knife hand. I'm very familiar with the knife hand points being made by the secretary.
Sorry, that was Fox News, not Newsmax. Correction on that. I'm not going to edit that. Yeah, the wood knife hands. Boom, 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 boom. What's kind of funny is when I was looking for that clip, Asen gave us, our friend Asen from on My Such gave us that clip. When you go to the DoD's version of that, they cut off the last portion about knife hands because they know how effing ridiculous it is that the Secretary of Defense is out here doing knife hands. It's such a patently ridiculous thing. Again, it's not the SecDef's job to be dictating basic training to the military services, but that's what he thinks his job is, lethality. But look, that's where he comes, but also where he comes from is just constant paranoia, palace intrigue. Obviously, you heard about the Signal Gate affair with the Yemen strikes, where he literally said they were clean on OPSEC because he was talking to a reporter in Signal. The ridiculous thing. It got so bad in the last few weeks. I don't know if you heard this. The White House had to call and tell Pete Hegseth to stop giving polygraph tests to his own staff because he's paranoid about leaks. Okay. But then this week, we saw another angle on this. And of course, what's driving a lot, and if you've seen me in my write-ups, I've talked a lot about how Pete Hegseth is truly a Christian nationalist. And that's not an accusation that's without merit. He has enacted weekly or monthly prayer meetings during duty hours where he's sending out an RSVP invite to members of the Pentagon to join him and bringing in extremist pastors from around the country to prayer for his evangelical faith. He joined a church that's based in the version he joined is in Tennessee, run by a guy named Doug Wilson. He actually moved his whole family to Tennessee to join this church. And this week, just today, he posted this clip from an interview that the founder, Doug Wilson, did with CNN. And this is just a portion, about 6 minutes, but you can see this is a screen record of Hegseth's tweet and a part of this interview. And I'll tell you why it's disturbing. You'll know.
Wilson says in his vision of a Christian society, women as individuals shouldn't be able to vote. His fellow pastors, Jared Longshore and Toby Sumter, agree.
In my ideal society, we would vote as households. And I would ordinarily be the one that would cast the vote, but I would cast the vote having discussed it with my household.
But what if there's your wife doesn't want to vote for the same person as you?
Right. Well, then that's a great opportunity for a good discussion.
There are some who have gone so far as to say that they want the 19th Amendment repealed.
I would support that. And I'd support it on the basis that the atomization that comes with our current system is not good for humans.
He is the head of our household.
Yeah.
Yes, and I do submit to him.
So like moving here
I was just
was
going to say that.
ultimately your decision.
Yes.
That's a great
example.
And Wilson, a veteran himself, is unapologetic about his view that women shouldn't be in certain leadership or combat roles.
Looking at the leadership page for Christ Church, it's all men. Do you accept women in leadership roles in the church and government?
In the church, no.
Wow.
Because the Bible says not to.
Okay. You saw what Hegseth said, all of Christ for life. That is Pete Hegseth's view. So the man in charge of our entire United States military, a diverse workforce, a diverse military representing all of our society as it should, minority, people of color, immigrants, women, men, gay, straight. He has such an extreme Christian belief. He doesn't believe women should be serving in places of leadership. And you may scoff at this, like, oh, but the good news is he could put that aside. But that would be also a lie because that's not what he's doing, is he? You know, he has made it clear that he has no intention of allowing women in leadership positions at all, right? He has made it very clear that women have no place, and he's been firing women right and left, as we know. Look, as soon as he took over, what did he do? Well, One of his first acts was to fire the Joint Chiefs. He fired Admiral Lisa Franchetti, who was the first woman to serve in the Joint Chiefs. Okay, just last month, he fired the Naval Academy superintendent, who's been was the first woman to serve in that role in the United States military history. By the way, a veteran of multiple combat tours and service overseas, Vice Admiral Yvette Davids, they had no explanation for replacing her, and they replaced her with a Marine for the first, a white male Marine lieutenant general, the first time in history that a Marine has been the commandant of the the superintendent of the military, the Naval Academy. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see the connections, do you? That while he's got a church that says women don't belong in leadership, they're literally firing women from their jobs with no explanation. Had they served poorly? Had they been done something illegal? Had they embarrassed the service? No. The simple fact is they're women. And that's what it's not a coincidence. Just like it's not a coincidence when you see the bigotry and sexism that is the hallmark of this DOD. Here's what came out this week, too. Another shocking event was that he has decided, this came out. So, as you know, they are pushing transgender service members out of the military. And it's a shocking move. And we saw it coming. But you would think that they would do it in a manner for good order and discipline and respecting the system. So many of our transgender service members have been in for literally decades. There's always been there. Many have served in silence. They served in constant fear. They were allowed to serve openly in the last 10 years. They were accruing, they were going to combat. They're serving with honor. Officially recognized over 4,000. Many think there's more than 10 to 20,000 in the ranks. But here's what came out this week. The Air Force announced in shocking news that they were going to deny retirement benefits to transgender service members who've applied for an early retirement option with 15 to 18 years of service. They would now, instead of separating with retirement benefits like me, health care for life, pay for life, the benefits they earned under the early retirement program the Air Force has in place, many were approved and then had that taken away from them. They're not sure how many, but at least a dozen service members were notified they'd been approved for early retirement. And then this week, instead, were notified that they would not have the retirement. This means they will now be faced the choice of either taking a lump sum, single-time separation payment offered to the junior troops, or simply be kicked out of the service with no benefits whatsoever. That's the option they're given. Many of these have 15 to 18 years of honorable service, and they're just actually shocking. And they gave it. What happened was shocking to me is they actually were told, many of them, and when the Pentagon, when Hegseth announced that they're going to ease transgender service members out, they promised anyone impacted would be given dignity and respect. But instead, it's been a series of dehumanizing and, quote, open cruelty for their lives since this has happened. They actually said that if someone's diagnosed with gender dysphoria on active duty National Guard Reserve, that's a mental illness that is incompatible with service. There's at least 4,240 troops with that, but not all of them have that. So it could be up to thousands, more than 2 million troops that'll be impacted by this. It's just a shocking way to treat people who have served their country with honor in every way. There's nothing illegal about being transgender. There's nothing against good order and discipline, no matter how much Pete Hegseth wants to say so about being a transgender service member. Again, they have served with honor, and now they're being treated with dishonor and disrespect. And, that's Pete Hegseth. And let me tell you guys why this bothers so many of us who have served so much. Less than 1/3 of Americans even qualify to serve in the military because of criminal records, health problems, overweight. Maybe they did drugs. Even ADHD drugs will disqualify them. They don't have high school diplomas. There's a million reasons why so many of our fellow Americans, the younger generation, again, we've got to get in young. You don't come in at 30 or 40. You come in at 18 or 19. They're disqualified to serve. And so we've got a shrinking pool of people who can even join the service. And Hegseth is hell-bent on making sure that's mostly white males and no one else. And they keep talking about how they've met other recruiting goals. Sure, there may be a short-term bump, but the losses we're suffering from people walking or voting, what we call voting with their feet, is going to be much bigger. And that is disturbing to all of us. And that's before we talk about them now being veterans. So let's transition over to the Veterans Affairs. Let's take a short break for our sponsor break. We've got a great sponsor with our friends at Shopify. Let's have a sponsor break. We'll come right back and talk about the craziness going over the Department of Veterans Affairs. Starting a business is very hard. You're going through everything with finding out your logo, building your website, getting your point of sale set up, your inventory, supply chains these days. Don't get me started about that. When my family started a business 12 years ago in a small town in Virginia, that was one of the big challenges we had. How do we find a point of sale that works? How do we run an online store? How does it all integrate with our social media channels and everything else? And we were just glad we finally found a partner that works so well for us. And that's where Shopify comes in. Shopify is a commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, and it's 10% of all e-commerce just in the US alone, from household names that like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started, or brands you should know like Sugar and Spruce in Fredericksburg, Virginia. You can get started your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand's style. Now, you accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography for you. You can get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns whenever your customers are scrolling or strolling, and it integrates directly into your point of sale system. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. So if you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. So that's where we come in. Turn your big business idea into... That's right. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Fred. That's go to shopify.com/Fred. One more time for those at home, shopify.com/Fred. You can start your business now and grow it successfully. Welcome back. So it is, I'm not to be outdone, of course. Pete Hegseth can't be outdone. He's going to have to keep up with the VA. And Doug Collins, if you haven't heard that name before, is a Secretary of Veterans Affairs. He was a congressman from Georgia. Word is he wants to go back to Georgia to be a senator now, or even the governor. But for now, he's the Secretary of the VA. And he's a character. I start there. This is a video. Doug loves his videos. They all do, don't they? But this is Doug's 6-month video. It's a little bit long, and then I'll talk about why I want to show you. But watch, here's Doug video we put out this week.
Hey everybody, it's Doug Collins. Wow, first day on the job. I want to thank President Trump for nominating me to be the 12th VA.
It's been 6 months since that video. So much has happened, and I'm so proud to be the Secretary of VA. So proud to work with the great folks at the VA to help our veterans to do exactly what I talked about in that video. From that moment forward, we said there's going to be one thing and one thing only that we're going to focus on, and that is putting veterans first. Now, since President Trump selected me to be the Veterans Affairs Secretary, he said to go take care of veterans, and that's what we've done. I mean, so many things that we've been able to accomplish, all because of the good teamwork, not only at the VA, but also of our partners in the nonprofits, our VSOs, and also just the veteran community in general. We've made a lot of changes. We've done a lot of things that are focused entirely on how do we do this as an organization to take care of veterans. We've transformed a bureaucratic organization in which we have sometimes more rules than we did understanding of what we were doing to make sure that veterans got the care they needed. So that's why we've worked on community care. That's why we've enlarged our referrals up from 6 months to 12 months. That's why we're taking right now a hard look at what we do internally for our community care, for our doctors, to let our primary care physicians be able to treat people and have continuity of care in a very sensible and reasonable way. It's why we have worked very hard to strengthen our teams inside our VA hospitals to make sure that we're giving direct care the best we can. Now, we do really good stuff here at the VA. Since we came in 6 months ago, the backlog was at 260,000, and I'm standing here today telling you we're almost at 160,000. That's 35% drop. Almost 100,000 backlogs have been cleared in just a little under 6 months. That's some impressive stuff.
So stop there. We'll work for the end and back, okay? From the end, they have decreased the backlog by something percent, okay? 35% is what it's big. Now, what you notice about Doug is that's the only statistic he talks about, okay? Now, VA is, by some measures, the second largest healthcare system in America. It's a healthcare system. So he keeps talking about bureaucracy, but has anybody ever worked in a hospital or a healthcare system? Yeah, it's complex. And yeah, there's a lot of bureaucracy because It's a healthcare system for 9 million veterans. Okay. So, yeah, it's complicated, but that's okay. But you notice he just talks about the backlog. Now, what backlog is he talking about? He's actually kind of mysterious there. What he's talking about is the backlog of initial claims for benefits, not healthcare benefits. And what do we mean by that? When a veteran leaves the service, he maybe not something, often not right away. I didn't apply right away. He puts in his paperwork to get the VA benefits, a percentage of disability for his benefits. For example, the first time I submitted, I had I had bad knees that ended up being fake later, had to be replaced. I had injured my foot very badly when I was serving in Iraq and had to have it rebuilt. Shoulder injuries, back injuries, you name it. Got real sick a couple times. It caused me long-term disabilities. I ended up with a 50% disability rating. And that translates to 1, access to VA healthcare, and 2, a certain amount of money. I don't remember what it was at the time, a couple $1,000 a month for life. An amazing, amazing thing. That's what he's talking about, that part, the benefits backlog. Now, why was there a benefits backlog when he took over? Well, that's common sense. Under President Biden, the PACT Act passed, and the PACT Act was the largest expansion of veterans' health care since Vietnam. They added well over 1 million plus veterans to the veterans rolls, the benefits rolls, and they expected all that. So imagine going from a steady increase of maybe 100,000 to 250,000 a year to suddenly in 1 year, 4 years ago, 1 million or so veterans over a year or two asked for their benefits. And they predicted it would go up, and it did go up. The backlog went up 25% of all. They hired 60,000 people. 60,000 people were hired to manage all that backlog. And it worked. I, for one, was part of the veterans who submitted for an upgrade of my disability based on the new rules. And I was given a higher disability rating. Thank God. That was very beneficial to me and my family because of the new things. So when you look at the charts, though, that backlog was already going down when he took over, literally a year of descent. So he's taken, it's already going down a roll. So basically he's rolling down the hill. Doug jumps in the seat and he keeps on rolling and he gets credit for it. But what's interesting is that's the only stat he talks about. He doesn't talk about wait times for medical appointments. He doesn't talk about backlogged surgeries. He doesn't talk about the cancellation rate for surgery. There's a scandal not 10 years ago of wait times for veterans to get health care at the Phoenix Hospital. They were cooking the books to make it look like veterans weren't waiting. This was a huge stat that has been pounded for years. Doug Collins has never put out how long veterans are waiting for health care. You see, that seems like it might be important. But let's go back to the beginning of that video again. What was the first thing that Doug mentioned? The first thing he mentioned, they're really proud of at the VA, but before benefits, before employees, it was community care. That's right. The first thing he mentioned that he's proud of is expanding community care for veterans. That's outsourcing, folks. So Doug Collins' thing that he's most proud of is they're outsourcing more veteran healthcare to the private market. That's the thing. And today, ProPublica came out with a shocking story about how many healthcare providers have both left the VA. I've got stories on that too. But even more importantly, how few have been hiring. The fact is VA is shedding healthcare providers and not hiring new ones at a staggering rate. It's too fast to keep up inside the VA with healthcare. And so what's happening is veterans healthcare inside the VA is very much at risk. Veterans, they're struggling. Veterans hospitals are struggling to replace hundreds of doctors and nurses who've left the system. And many job applicants who are now turning down offers, worried that positions in the VA are not stable and they're uneasy with the overall direction of the AG. Records show that ProPublica got hold of that nearly 4 in 10 of the roughly 2,000 doctors that have been offered jobs from January to March of this year turned them down. Yeah, 40% of all the doctors who had gone to apply to work at the VA and were going to help take care of veterans have said no because since Doug Collins took over. So after 6 years of adding medical staff, the VA this year is down more than 600 doctors and a staggering 1,900 nurses. The number of doctors on staff has declined each month since Donald Trump took office. The agency lost twice as many nurses as it hired between January and June, and records by ProPublica show. And this is the best part. that the VA, of course, goes on the attack. Peter Kasparitz, he just, you're cherry picking issues that are almost routine. It is not routine, right? He's lying, okay? And they're saying they have practice. But listen to their strategy to overcome this. They said in the quote, including referring veterans to private providers and telehealth appointments. Because a nationwide shared health course made hiring and they're admitting that they announced at the beginning of the year they're going to lay off 80,000 people. They rolled that back to 30,000 after an outcry. But the reason they rolled it back to 30,000 is because so many veterans and so many providers, have taken early outs, okay, and are leaving sooner under early retirements. As of it is, wait times are going up, and that's where we get really interesting. Appointment wait times for new patients seeking primary and special care have increased. But as of early July, the average wait time for outpatient surgery appointments is 41 days, which is 13 higher days than the goal set and 2 days longer than a year ago. But the shocking thing, this goes by location. In some locations, it's even in Augusta, Maine, it's 38 days or longer than it was last year. 38 days longer to get outpatient surgery, a minor surgery, than it was just 1 year ago. And they're complaining. It is a shocking number. The vacancy rate for doctors at the VA was 13.7 in May, up from 12. On and on, we're hearing that there's problems. And then all this comes at the same time as we're reporting that over 10,000 employees of the VA have taken early resignations, and they'll be leaving in September. And the list of people, contrary to what VA has been telling us, is really long, and of people that we really can't afford to lose. It said they can, all they had to do, remember that letter from, you guys remember the thing from Doge, where they said, hey, all you got to do is say, resign, and you get full pay till the end of September. Well, guess what? It's September next month. And now millions of veterans are going to lose healthcare and other benefits from this because of this. And here's some of the numbers. And this is where it's crazy. They won't disclose publicly how many employees took the offer, but the Warhorse News, through Freedom of Information Act, got hold of human records resources, IT stuff, and they found that the bulk of the 10,000 deferred resignations are leaving the veterans, 2,000 fewer registered nurses will be there, 750 doctors, according to the latest, will be gone. But this is where it's shocking. Nurses, claims assistants, therapists, pharmacists, and psychologists are all on the list of people who are going to get the early retirement. And it's getting pretty ugly. Let me show you some charts here, because I love charts, right? And that's what we do here. So let's see. Here we go. This is the current situation of doctors and nurses at the VA. That shows you from 2024, they'd gone up. Now it's negative. It's gone negative. So the staff changes in the first 9 months of 2025 compared to the first 9 months in 2024 is minus 751 and minus 2,000 nurses. This is a number that you would think that Doug Collins would be crowing about, right? That they increase on, because it's a healthcare organization. But this is how many doctors and nurses they're losing. They're down doctors, they're down nurses. And these are the positions that took the deferred resignation. Look, it may seem like they love to say it's bureaucrats, but human resources managers are the people that hire these doctors. IT people who handle the records. Clerks and assistants are those are the people who maintain the records for the doctors. These are all positions. And then, of course, you have nurses and healthcare. That's before we even talk about mental health care providers that we are losing. You see, they are losing an alarming number of people at the VA, and it's not getting any better. And so as he talks about outsourcing to community care, you can see why, because they're losing doctors and nurses at a staggering rate, and they can't keep up with it. And you have to believe that's the goal, right? I mean, it's hard to say for a second that really the goal of all this isn't privatizing the healthcare. And that was the goal of the previous Trump administration and people who support them. That was in Project 2025 to essentially, in many ways, privatize veterans' healthcare. And so when you hear him say benefits, 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 which is paying money to veterans, you never talk about healthcare inside the VA. And why do so many of us care about healthcare inside the VA? Well, that's because healthcare in the VA is better for veterans. And I'm not just saying that. It's not a made-up stat. Veterans' healthcare is better. And they just have a story in Washington Monthly, kind of get out. And what they're showing, and this is where it gets really act. Since the Mission Act was passed in 2018 under Trump, that was able to get this community care, more veterans being referred out to the community, what they're finding is that they're not keeping up with standards in any way, that the people they're sending veterans to are not doing the basic training and the basic certifications to be qualified to take care of veterans. The VA decided to make those qualifications for mental health care providers voluntary. Okay. So what they found in a community care report was that mental health. So let's see, between 2021 and 2023, veterans received mental health referrals to a total of 22,725 providers outside of the VA. Of those clinicians, 2,200 or 22,000, only 380 had completed a single training on taking care of veterans. Only 280. So we're sending veterans to mental health care providers who aren't trained in suicide prevention or active suicide risks. And that during that period, 8,000 of those veterans were flagged as active suicide risks, were sent to community care providers who have no training whatsoever in dealing with that. That's not great, folks. That's not great at all. And that's what I mean by the dismantling of the VA. That's what I mean when I say they really are doing this on purpose. They really are dismantling the VA and making it private care. And there's one more final act that really makes the point even clearer, and that is the act of canceling the unions. And that's the one that came out this week. As you remember, they finally got a deal with the Supreme Court to start canceling the collective bargaining agreements. And this week, the VA took the dramatic step of canceling all the bargaining unit employees that weren't this is shocking. We're talking about the American Federation of Government Employees, the AFL-CIO, National Association of Government Employees, National Federal of Employees, the Nurses Union, and the Service Employees International Union. Basically, everyone's a union who is a union employee at the VA has now lost their union bargaining ability and lost their union contracts, lost their ability to raise flags about care for our veterans through their union unit and all those things. And they presented, and what's really sick is the VA presented as some sort of a win for veterans because so much time is being spent on union duties instead of taking care of veterans. It created all these stats. I'm not going to read them because they're all bullshit. But they're trying to make it sound like somehow this is better for veterans, firing these people and getting rid of them instead of paying them reasonable wages. All of this has one purpose, folks. They want to privatize our veterans' care to unqualified service. And the thing is, 40% of veterans or more live in rural areas. At the same time, they just passed the big ugly bill that's going to close even more rural hospitals. Many veterans have to travel hours now for care because there is no care. There is no care in their community. There's no mental health providers in remote towns. The VA was the provider, and that's the goal of all this. So two key institutions of our nation are in the hands of extremists and others who want to dismantle them. And that's what we have to worry about. And there's a lot to focus on. I know a lot of my fellows here at Midas Touch are talking about the redistricting fight. They're talking about the Epstein files. I get it. But I'm a veteran. And I want you to be aware of these things because your veterans, your friends who are veterans, your friends who are VA employees and DOD employees or service members, they know what's going on and they feel abandoned. A lot. I hear from veterans every day. They're despondent how bad this is getting. They can't get service at the VA anymore. They're watching what's happening to the providers they loved. They watch what's happening to service members right now are just basically being used as political tools. This is monstrous by this administration, monstrous by Pete Hegseth, and monstrous by Doug Collins. All, of course, goes back to Donald Trump and his love for getting his very own Purple Heart. It's just crazy. And we'll be keeping an eye on it. I'll be keeping an eye on it, as you know. If you follow me at fpwellman.substack.com, I haven't done any banners because I've been too busy. Go to our Substack, fpwellman.substack.com. I write about a lot of this stuff. I wrote about some of this week. There's even another part that I didn't talk about in all of this. The Army, for example, has now decided that those who are being kicked out of the military, the Army, for what they call punitive discharges, what's called a Chapter 10, 13, or 14. In other words, a soldier who's a troublemaker and can be kicked out of the military, they're not going to most of them will now no longer have mandatory mental health checks. So the people who are being kicked out, often because they've been sexually assaulted, because they have PTSD, maybe from a peacetime accident, unless they've been in combat in the last 2 years or reported an actual sexual assault, which, as you know, 90% of sexual assaults or more are never reported, they will not get a mental health exam on their way out of the military, and very well end up with other than honorable discharges and not even be considered veterans. That's the kind of monstrous stuff that's going on under this administration. So if you follow me Substack, I'd love you to follow me there so I can tell you all about all this stuff. There's a lot going on. And then, of course, every Sunday we have Too Late to Cancel. Our Sunday show is a lot of fun. It's on my channels, FP Wellman social media, and of course the On Democracy channel on YouTube. It's a live show. And of course, our Substack. We have a lot of fun, a panel of comedy guests every week, as well as some very interesting conversations with folks you know, a lot of them you know, even more you don't. But Too Late to Cancel, our live Sunday show every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, right on all the On Democracy channels. Thanks for joining me here on Friday night. Let me talk to you about these issues I care about so passionately. The fact that so much damage is being done to our military and our veterans care. We'll keep on fighting. I hope you're going to keep on fighting. Our voices do matter. I hope you'll keep using yours. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to the Midas Touch Network. Thanks to all of you who join me every Friday. I can't wait to see you next week. Hang in there, folks. We got a lot of fighting to do still.